Hi there, my name is Athol and I'm here to help you fix your relationship, improve your life, and understand your personality. And in this video, what I want to talk about is why it's so important when you first start really working on things to not get in a mindset where you're going to express and talk and complain about the things that are upsetting you, especially with your partner. Pretty much at the beginning of trying to work on things, you're going to, in a sense, sort of zip it, not talk a whole lot, and just start trying to make changes. In part, we're going to try and use that sort of fake it until you make it philosophy to an extent. There's a little bit of a variance on it, but it's close to that. And the reason you do this, and the reason I want to see you guys do this, is that when you have a situation that is troubling you, it is a mixture of, on one hand, the actual problem that needs to be fixed, and on the other hand, the negative emotions that you feel about that problem. So it may be a case of your partner is not particularly attracted to you, and you feel really bad and upset and rejected by that. And you really have to separate those two things, because if it just turns into you're going to focus on your feelings and you're going to talk about your feelings and you're going to express your emotions and you're going to put all that energy into this expression or venting of negative emotions, very often there's not a whole lot of energy left to actually work on the problem. And this is especially important when you're expressing negative emotions. I mean, if you're happy and content, you actually expressing that happiness and contentment requires very little energy. But negative emotions tend to require enormous amounts of energy in order to express them. Another part of this is that usually the things that you are venting about and expressing, you tend to end up feeling more strongly over time. That whole theory of if you vent and you blow off steam and you just run your mouth and get it all out, completely and utterly wrong. All that happens is, by being super angry endlessly and exploding about it all the time, is you just get angrier and angrier. And by the same token, people that tend to be happy and express happiness and contentment tend to sort of manifest and continue to snowball that sense of happiness. So that's in part what's behind the fake it until you make it, in a sense, is that if you are at least being somewhat positive, that you'll tend to snowball that positivity. And stopping that negative venting is also going to stop that snowballing of feeling angrier and madder and more resentful about things. And in terms of your relationship, if you are expressing anger and frustration and rejection and a whole bunch of negative emotions at your partner, it is very, very likely that they will get defensive, reactive, and that they will feel worse about the relationship, worse about you, and then of course they can turn it back to you. You've sent out a bunch of negative emotions, they've returned them back to you, and then the situation's worse, everybody is more butthurt, and it can go round and round and round. And you can almost have this sort of death spiral simply because you're both running your mouth and hurting each other. So in part, if you're having these sort of negative death spirals, you really want to stop setting them off if you can. Which is why very, very often when I've started coaching with someone, there's a period of about 3 weeks often, somewhere in the middle often, where it's like, I just want you to not do anything for this next period of time. I don't want you to try and necessarily fix things. I don't want you to try and complain about things. I'm just looking for a period of just calm where no one is blowing anything up, and the things that are bothering you, you're not necessarily fixating on. I'm just looking for the calm so that we can stop tearing each other up and driving the relationship into the ground. And it's often one of the most productive periods in the coaching when they get off this roller coaster of attacking each other and going round and round. The negative emotions about the relationship, they're a great sign to you that something isn't right with it and something needs to change, but they're not necessarily going to be the way to change things themselves. So that sense of, I'm not going to particularly talk about it all. I'm not going to try and have massive talks or relationship discussions and try and leverage that into getting them to change their behavior. While you work on things that could potentially change their behavior. So if the problem is they're not attracted, well, if you stop complaining that they're not attracted and work on being more attractive, well, then hopefully you can come back and re-engage and talk or whatever it is, a month later, 2 months later, 3 months later, whatever it is, and get the relationship, ticking over a little more that way. Sometimes you really do just have to stop talking. So, in a sense, there's an element of fake it until you make it, but it's really just saying, I'm not going to be actively using negative emotion to just get in the way of progress that could be made. So typically what I want to see is stop whining, stop complaining, start working on the things that can actually improve it, and then basically ride that philosophy as far as you can. And as long as you're seeing some sense of positive progress being made, or at least you have a reasonable expectation that it will be made, pretty much you can keep doing it. And often this whole technique is what gets a relationship out of a really bad place or a truly fragile place, and at least gets it to an average place, which is a whole lot better than it being terrible. There's a few different techniques when you're in the average place to get it to the good place. You're typically, your partner's typically coming on board a little more by that time. You're typically more able to have good conversations about each other's needs and what you want. And you've got off that roller coaster of just, fighting with each other. So that's the sort of way I would use the whole fake it until you make it philosophy, is that to stop the negative expressions that are getting you nothing except making it worse, and then using all that energy that you could have spent on having a fight about it all on things that might actually improve things. So it's not a Pollyanna approach. You really do have to expend energy on the things that can improve it, but at least that's a far more productive place to spend your energy as opposed to bitching, whining, and complaining. And that's about it. I will leave it there, and I will catch you next time.